What's up guys, Old Painless here, and today I have another third-party review. We are looking at GenerationToy's second figure in their Gravity Builder line, which is their Devastator rendition. And today we're looking at MixerTruck. It's like they're not even trying with those names. Basically their rendition or version of MixMaster from Devastator. So, just like you'd expect, he is a mixing truck. Pretty cool looking. Before we get into the figure, let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging itself. So same type of packaging we saw on Scraper. Really nice painted illustration of the character right there. I like that quite a bit. Kind of continues on to the bottom right there as well. Really nice looking, very sharp looking packaging. Has a nice gold foil GenerationToy and MixerTruck there in the front with the framing there as well. We do on the top, you get sort of that striped texture or patterning there with GenerationToy. Backside, a sort of pencil or line art of Gravity Builder with warnings, and then we have that same type of textured box and packaging on the inside that we saw on Scraper. Not too heavy on the way of accessories. I'm not really going to bother pulling them out. But you do get instruction manuals like you saw on Scraper. If you bought the first generation MixerTruck like I have, then you also do get replacement parts for Scraper, which come packaged inside in 3 little baggies. And you also do get an instruction guide for those parts. So let's go ahead and take a look at a MixerTruck here. Pretty slick looking. It's basically what you'd expect out of a mixing truck. No articulation on the barrel, it's just a static piece right there, which I don't mind. I don't care about the rotation aspect of it. But it has all the colors you're looking for. Plenty of that sort of limeish green color. Purple accented throughout. Some nice silvers as well. We get some of that gunmetal gray plastic there too. A lot of black and grays and silvers to break up the sculpt. A little silver detailing here and here, the exhaust pipes as well. A lot of really cool little elements too, like the black plastic ladders and stuff on the back, side mirrors there. We get that same sort of yellow and black stripage on the side there, which is nice. Gold and silver on the front bumper, which looks great. A big fan of that gold. Seems maybe a little bit out of place initially, but it looks really slick on this figure. Sculpted windshield wipers, clear plastic windshield. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clean. It's a nice looking alt mode. Rubber tires just like we had on Scraper. Really nice. It's kind of a hard rubber plastic, or it's kind of a hard rubber, not plastic, but really nice there. You do get one additional piece for articulation up top. This pops open. I guess you could imagine you're loading the cement mixture stuff inside or whatever, if you really want to get into it, but that'll stay shut for me. Combiner port visible in the back, whatever. But all in all, I think it's a pretty strong alt mode here. I definitely dig it. I think it's a little bit stylized. It's not something that you'd see necessarily driving down the street. I think the cabin's a little bit wide and maybe a little squat in proportion, but still looks pretty good. That doesn't really bother me too much. I'm going to keep things simple. I won't really bring out any vehicles, including Scraper, because I showed those comparisons in the Scraper video. I can leave an annotation down below in the description, so in case you want to click that, you can see a lot of the side-by-side comparisons with Scraper in robot, leg mode, and alt mode. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this sucker transformed. I want to show you guys first his leg mode. So we'll go ahead and get that elevator music cued and get that montage rolling. This part's a little bit tricky. I'm actually going to stop the montage now. What we have to do here is, and it's not very well explained in the instructions, we need to take this outer shell of the cabin off and pull it upwards. And the way we do this is there's a piece of plastic, this green plastic right here, basically which is clipping this cabin into the leg piece itself right there. So the best way to do this is loosen up the top flap here, and then this whole outer shell is on a pretty robust joint underneath here. And all you really want to do is just apply some light pressure. It kind of flexes a little bit, like so. And then it just folds up like that. So this joint here, I've done this transformation many times now. It's attached via that black joint right there. I think it's designed to be pretty flexible. It's not a really rigid, tight joint. So you definitely want to just sort of bend outwards and unclip it that way. Now, before we go any further, I just want to show the best way to put this back into alt mode, because it's, again, not explained well in the instructions. So if you see here, just pushing it straight down, it doesn't really fit into those gaps very well. So again, utilize that loose joint right there, keep this portion unpegged, and just do a slight outward bend to it, okay? And what you want to do is, this whole green bar is going to run from this channel to this channel right here. And the best way to get this in there is you flex this cabin piece outwards, line it up into that back portion there first, and then that will naturally slide into place right there. And that's how you get the outer shell re-clipped back onto the leg. So don't be afraid to just flex that joint a little bit. I see 0 stress marks on there. I think it's designed to give you some flexibility right there. And that will allow you to get that freedom that you need to sort of re-clip this on and off. And one other really quick note while we're here. This heel piece right here, I'm going to be extending this for the alt mode, or for the leg mode. But some of the initial MixMasters that shipped actually had this already unfolded to some degree. So it's shipped mistransformed. So you got to make sure when you're going back in the truck mode, this heel piece is actually pushed all the way upwards like that. Otherwise, the cabin's not going to close up tightly. You're going to have a floppy front end to the vehicle right there. So again, just make sure that's closed up nice and tight. But going towards our leg mode, we'll go ahead and fold that back out. Alright, let's get back to the transformation. And there we have MixMaster in his combiner mode. So yeah, it's a really pretty clean transformation from truck mode into foot mode. Not too much going on except for, again, sort of unshelling the front cabin and extending that forward. But it cleans up very nicely. You can see here a full 360 view. We do get some weapon storage on the back, which is nice. One thing I feel a lot of reviewers and other people have kind of overlooked is that the rocket cannons from the canopy up top actually do plug in down below in the heel. And that's an intended design here because it pegs in to the 2 extendable heel pieces we talked about. So it solidifies this back portion, and then these gray pieces here actually plug in. They peg into the side of the black heel. So it creates a really firm connection in 2 points, heel and the side panels. It kind of keeps everything locked together nice and cleanly. And if you want some rocket heels, you can certainly pop those out if you want to. Looks kind of silly to me. But from a side shot, it's a pretty substantial foot here. I mean, you get a nice extendable cabin or toe portion going forward. Plenty of heel support. That's a nice thing about this and the scraper leg, is that we do get a lot of real estate down below on the foot itself. So that's going to give, I think, really nice support for the figure when it's, you know, finally all combined together. One of the complaints people have had is that, you know, in this form, the intended design is to have the bumper kind of pushed upwards like this, and it does kind of give it a like a smushed toe or smushed front look to it, which, you know, I can't really argue that. It is a little bit goofy in that regard, but I suppose you could sort of put these down if you wanted to. You'd have to unclip them and then rotate it downwards. But the way it's designed like this, it keeps things in line. So the wheels pushed up like this with the bumper, and then basically creates a nice straight edge from front all the way to back heel. So, you know, it is maybe a slightly off-putting, but it's really not that bad in my opinion. It looks a lot better in hand. I think that's pretty nice. I like that the fact that these front thigh connectors also do tab in and lock into place down below here too. So things on this figure just feel really tight and really secure. And you do get some toe articulation. This kind of rocks up and down a little bit. You get plenty of ankle tilt, which is really nice, as well as some back and forth motion. This is all allowed via the robot hips right there. So all in all, pretty nice. Again, if you want to see this compared to Scraper, check the link down below. You can kind of see it side by side. Alright, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get this guy transformed into robot mode. We'll take a look at some of the other features of the figure, including this barrel that can open up. But yeah, let's go ahead and cue that elevator music, and we'll get this guy transformed. Quick note here, again, just make sure we use that that flex on the outside. Reattach that cab right there. And I do want to point out one thing while we're here too, is that the knees are on a double hinge. And they're not really, it's pretty minor, but you can see there is a double hinge inside right there. So you do have a little bit of play there. You can kind of get this pulled upwards if you want to kind of extend the leg further down. If you do go back to vehicle mode though, make sure you compress that double hinge just like that. So this actual knee joint is pushed at an angle, and then the silver thigh actually abuts next to that green portion inside. You want a nice firm close connection right there. But let's go ahead and get it back into robot mode. And here is MixerTruck, aka MixMaster, in robot mode. Yeah, he's a pretty cool robot. I mean, it's definitely a deviation from what the G1 look is. especially the head sculpt. You know, that's certainly not super G1 accurate. You know, being that there's a face mask instead of a face. One of the things people have been hoping for is that possibly GenerationToy would go back and revisit some of these head sculpts on the initial figures. We have seen alternate head sculpts that are more G1 accurate for some of the other figures as well. So, fingers crossed for that. Although, again, this head sculpt doesn't really bother me too much. It has plenty of character. Yeah, there's a mask on it, but, you know, it still looks pretty good. It's a good-looking sculpt nonetheless. Has great light piping too, which is obviously blocked by this chunk of plastic from behind. But we'll touch that in a second here. Sculpting all around, though, looks pretty clean. Some nice purple translucent plastic on the chest with some painted, sculpted gray detailing throughout. Plenty of color breakup, blacks, silvers, grays, the yellow and black striping or banding on the sides. We do get the nice silver thighs, translucent windows on the front there and the lower legs. The gold and silver look nice there too. There's plenty of color breakup throughout the whole body right there. There we go. A couple areas that are a little questionable, or a little odd, I guess. You know, we have these purple flaps on the thighs that just kind of sit right here. Just seems like more of an afterthought. I mean, they're obviously a locking mechanism for the combiner mode, but we have a visible sort of hole right there where this would peg into for the vehicle. And I don't understand why they couldn't actually have the same type of sculpted, you know, hole in the side of the leg to have that kind of nice and flush. So instead we have kind of a floppy little flap right there. And if you want to, you can actually plug it into the front of the leg instead. But that kind of looks odd to me since it should be sort of, you know, I think the solid silver here looks a lot cleaner. So yeah, definitely kind of a weird detail. These shoulder flaps here, pretty bulky, you know. From the back they look really weird because you have the front basically attaches on the tip of the shoulder, so all this real estate for these flaps is, you know, basically hanging off the backside. From a profile shot I think it looks fine. From the front I don't mind it either. Definitely feels a little more sort of anime inspired versus like G1. I'm not too big on the Gundam and stuff, but it kind of reminds me like a Gundam type design. With these wings you can kind of fold and articulate upwards like that. I do like the fact that they are ratcheted though. So you can actually get, you know, perfect symmetry with the same angle or ratchet click, you know, so that way you're not sort of adjusting and fiddling with these things constantly. You can kind of get their initial placement and just keep them there and, you know, not worry about things sagging or falling forward or anything like that. They don't really bother me too much, you know, as long as you keep them like maybe at a low angle like that or flush against the upper arm. I think it looks pretty clean. A little sloppy from the back though. And speaking of the back over here, this is kind of a cool thing here. This actually opens up. This also opens up in the vehicle mode too. I forgot to show that off to you. But an interesting way to handle this, you know, this element of the figure. They did include a rocket thruster that can sort of extend upwards, and I guess they would kind of function as like a laser cannon in alt mode if you want to split this open. So that's kind of cool, and you can kind of accordion these two elements sort of back into the body but leave them open there just like that, which looks okay from the front. It kind of bulks out the backside a bit more. This becomes more visible, you know, along the top right there. The real nice thing is that this opening up allows you to do a couple things with this top piece, because this is pretty monstrous. It's a big rocket launcher. Speaking of which, you can extend those rockets. Looks pretty nice, clear plastic, silver paint around there as well. But basically this is pretty big, so it's going to be tough to articulate the head, tough to utilize light piping. It is the G1 look, but it is big. So what you can do is fold this backwards if you want to, if you have that split open. You can still articulate it a little bit that way. That does free up the light piping in the head a lot more. The other nice thing you can do is it actually folds all the way back. So this can come back like so, which is not the way I like to do it because I think that looks awkward. It's a huge chunk of plastic going straight up. and it's gappy down below here, although I guess you could fill that out with those rocket launchers right there, or thrusters. The other way you can do this is you fold this up, you can rotate this 180 just like so, and these are pretty loose hinges here. I am kind of flexing that plastic a little bit, but it is, I'm not really worried about that breaking. I see 0 stress marks on it. It's meant to kind of be loose plastic right there. So this is the way I like to do it though. I like to actually open that up, flip it around 180, and then fold that flat against the back, just like so. And then it actually bulks out and fills out that back portion really well. You can even put the rockets down if you want to. That looks pretty cool. And from the side, it's no bulkier really, I mean, because these these flaps here kind of cover that up quite a bit. I think from the front, that's really cool looking. I think it's a nice sort of option. And the heel flaps are pretty substantial, so you can actually get them to stand upright pretty stably, with all that back weight to it. You may want to keep the rockets upright if you're a G1 purist. This obviously isn't a pure G1 inspired figure, so at least you have options. You can kind of pose it and mess around with it and play with it however you like to. To me, that looks really cool though. I like the shoulder flaps with the back rotated down like that. He just looks menacing. He's a freaking brute. I mean, this guy's been hitting the gym. Doing this way as well, you even see some sculpted detail here which isn't visible in any other mode. So I mean, they definitely thought about that. It's an element that they basically showcased right there. So one thing I want to show off now would be the articulation. Arms are really nice, full 360s, upper bicep swivel, wrist swivel. Hands are on a single, rather the fingers are on a single pinned hinge right there. These we touched on already, but they can go fully up like that, almost 90 degrees, and they are ratcheted, so you can kind of click those around 180. Really not much of a waist swivel that I can really see. I didn't see one really on Scrapper either. That's kind of unfortunate. You get a little bit of a motion back and forth. You get a lot of wiggle though, so you can kind of do the little teacup oblique bend right there if you want to. Legs are on ratchets right there. Nice and clicky. Upper thigh swivel. That's probably why they don't actually lock these down, so to prevent, well actually they can swivel below or above that flap. So yeah, I really wish these could have tabbed it on the sides and locked it in nice and flush, but they didn't do it. Legs go more than 90, or rather knees go more than 90 degrees. Again, you do get that weird double jointed knee in there, so you can kind of pull that around. All the posability that you need there out of the knee. And the feet are on ball joints. They get a swivel left to right. They get some rocking back and forth. This heel works pretty well, although it's really not the best design. It's a small panel. It works, it does its job. It's just a little unsightly in my opinion. But nonetheless, it gives you support that you need. So plenty of articulation, except for maybe the waist joint right there. Nice tight ratchets on those hips. Definitely appreciate that. And let's take a quick look at his gun here too. We haven't actually looked at that yet. So the gun is actually 3 parts. We have the main body, which actually does have some paint on it. Looks decent enough. Simple sculpting on there. Silver tip, which slides and clicks into place. And then we do have a moving handle right there. This is a big issue. This handle sucks. I mean, just to put it bluntly. I mean, look how small that is. It barely has any clearance. I mean, that is a tiny, tiny handle. And that's really one of the main complaints that this figure, or one of the main flaws this figure has. It really can't hold a weapon well. Yeah, you can pop it in there, but it's super loose. I mean, that's pathetic. I don't get why they couldn't have designed a better handle for it. It just seems like a stupid oversight. It's really floppy, really loose. I suppose you could plug it into his forearm there. That looks really stupid to me, so I would never do that. I did find that if you kind of twist the hand a little bit, it applies pressure from the wrist sculpt there onto the butt of the gun, and that actually holds it relatively tight that way. So that's maybe one solution, but really not the most well thought out weapon like we got on Scraper. Should have been done better. Speaking of Scraper, I did want to at least bring him in here into the video side by side so you could see him. There is his Constructicon brother right there. Those guys look awesome together. I'm a big fan of how this set is shaping up. Really my only complaint is just the head sculpts. I do like the head sculpts. They're stylized, they're updated, they're not G1 super accurate or anything like that. But they look good to me. And as a team, as a cohesive team, they look great together right there. And just one more quick comparison while I have them here. We're going to bring in Wheeljack, just so you can see the height, and you can see if maybe that fits your display needs right there. A little bit taller than a Masterpiece car, certainly a lot bulkier, that's for sure. Alright guys, so one other thing I wanted to point out is that we talked about, you know, this piece pivoting 180, folding down backwards. This is attached to this silver joint here by a single screw. And if you frequent TFW boards, I'm the guy that actually had an issue where this piece became detached from that joint right there. Definitely was a shocker. What I had noticed over time was that this piece had kind of gotten looser and looser, and I started to see a visible little bit of green plastic, if I pulled a little bit away from that joint, popping up between these two pieces. And I thought, oh, whatever, maybe that's a design feature. You know, maybe it's designed to be loose like that so you can kind of get some more clearance to it. But no, I mean, what had actually happened inside was that the screw had come undone, and this piece completely detached off that joint. So what you got to be aware of is that when you're twisting or rotating this 180, there's a single screw that locks it into place with a washer inside. And you know, depending on how you're rotating it, that may or may not actually loosen the screw, which is what happened to me. It was an easy fix if it happens to you. I mean, all you really do is that there are 3 screws. I can't really get a good shot of it here, but there are 3 screws right in there, and you basically pull those out. It splits this joint along that seam. All I did was I reattached the screw. I put a little bit of glue in on the inside and then reattached that joint back together, and now it's super freaking tight. I still get that clean rotation with it. There's no looseness now though between this and this piece. So, you know, it's not a common issue. I haven't seen anybody else with that problem. I reported that maybe about a month or 2 ago. I know GenerationToys is looking into that joint specifically after I had posted it. Someone had passed that feedback along to them, so they're looking into it, but it doesn't seem to be a reoccurring issue. I think maybe just, you know, out of the factory, my joint was a little bit loose was all. But the good news is that if it does happen to you, it's an easy enough fix. I mean, you really just literally pop out 3 screws, split that joint, and then you can reattach it, maybe put a little bit of glue in there to make it nice and secure. So final thoughts on MixingTruck or MixerTruck, aka MixMaster. I like this figure a lot. It definitely deviates a lot more away from the G1 design, unlike their Scraper or Scrapper figure. I think Scraper's definitely a little bit more in line with what G1 was, and it was a smart first release because it kind of had that familiar vibe to it. MixerTruck, you know, again, it definitely takes some liberties with its design and aesthetic, in particular the head sculpt. But I like it a lot. It feels like a big, beefy construction vehicle. He looks fantastic with Scraper as well. It has all the articulation you're looking for, minus maybe the waist joint. And there's some odd choices like the leg flaps we talked about. But all in all, I mean, this is like a big, brutish character. I think he looks great. I mean, the color breakup is fantastic. The paint is done very well, very cleanly. The sculpted detail is, you know, it's not too busy, I don't think. You know, I like the playability you get out of these arm flaps. I like the playability out of the backpack, which you can put as a rocket launchers. I mean, there's a lot you can do with this figure. He's a lot of fun, and it feels solid in hand. And I really think it's a good addition to the Gravity Builder line. And in my opinion, I mentioned this in my previous review with Scraper, I think GenerationToy is 2 for 2 right now with these figures. Again, looking at this right now, if aesthetically he's not your cup of tea, there may be a better Devastator option out there that might, fit your needs. It looks like Toy World's going to have a little bit more of a Studio Walks G1 inspired rendition coming out of Devastator. So maybe give that one a shot there instead. But if you're looking for more of a chuggish / masterpiece sort of inspired figure, one that's not slavishly G1, but it has enough sort of key elements that kind of cue you into the G1 aesthetic and design, I think GenerationToy is nailing it. And I'm really, really excited about their next 2 releases that should be coming out at the end of the month. So looking forward to doing those 2 reviews for you guys. Again, liking this figure quite a bit. There we go. Again, a little bit of a weird head sculpt. Don't mind it though, I think it's pretty sharp. Yeah, give these guys a shot. If you like what you see, toss me a sub, and more reviews coming soon. And guys, thanks for watching. Have a great day.